Okay, I've noticed that the inside diameter of this plastic pipe is just a smidgen, like about a 32nd of an inch larger than 2 inches. Okay, and I'm going to have to keep that in mind. And when I get down close to that diameter, I'm going to switch, and I'm going to take my carbide metal cutter out, and I'm going to put my good old scraper in. And the reason for that is I think it'll probably do a much smoother job on the final cut or two. The reason I don't have it in to start with is because this machine will always keep this scraper at the same angle, and it's always wearing in the same spot, whereas when you're doing it by hand, you're always twisting it back and forth and getting on a fresh spot on here. Anyway, I think you understand what I'm trying to say here. We are now down to probably, I'm guessing, 10,000ths of an inch of the maximum size that this can be and still fit in the plastic pipe. I know that bottom one isn't very straight, but that's okay. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to back it off a little here, start it up, and as soon as I see the scraper starting to take off sawdust here, then we'll go across and see what we've got. Now you can't help but notice the huge difference that the regular scraper made. It's very, very smooth, hardly needs sanding. Well, it would be a very, very tight fit, but I think it's just about right. Maybe I could go just a smidgen more. You probably noticed I dialed in 10,000ths of an inch there. Well, 10,000ths radius is actually 20,000ths diameter, and as you're going to see, that was too much. Okay, I know you have heard me use words like smidgen and, real technical words like that. Well, smidgen, that's sort of machinist talk for just a tiny bit. Let's see what we got here now. Oh, I might have gone in a little bit too much. It's just a smidgen over 2 inches right now. Well, we'll soon find out. Yeah, it's a little bit loose. Well, that's okay. That's all right. Next time I'll use a smaller smidgen. What? That's the trouble with 4K. You can count every whisker. I have concluded that this side, like you can see it's two halves, right? So this side I think is going to look nicer after it's buffed than this side. Now I could be wrong. Anyway, so keeping that in mind, I want to know where I'm going to make the little hole. So that would mean if I want this thing, facing forward and right in the center, I'm going to want to have the little hole back here somehow. So, okay, so the center would be about here. So if I put my little hole probably back here, it should be all right. I'm just eyeballing it here. It's probably pretty close. Now, what size do I make my hole? Okay, that's 56 thousandths of an inch. I don't know if you can see that or not. Now you're probably thinking you don't have a drill bit that small. Well, these ones here are 47s. So I've got probably my 72. And if the little wire is just slightly bent, it'll sort of wedge itself into the hole. Okay, as it turns out here, I've got one that is just a little bit under a 1/16 of an inch. And I think it's about 61 thousandths, so we'll use that one. It's a little closer. Now I shouldn't have to go very deep here. Maybe it could go just a little bit lower. I'll snip maybe 1/4 of an inch off of this wire here. I think that's going to be alright. After I get it in place, I just put a little dab of crazy glue right there. Keep it from swinging around when I immerse it into the Alumilite, or however I'm going to do it. I still don't know how I'm going to do it. Okay, that's some better. But I got a little problem going on here. You can see what it is. This piece of pipe is way too short. I'm going to have to cut another piece here. Now I know I said this in another video, but it's so important I'm going to repeat it, and that is that when you're cutting something around in a saw like this, it can start to spin on you if you're not holding it down really tight. So I'm using this clamp, and I'm also going to be holding it very tight with my hand. And when I've stopped, I'm going to wait for the blade to come to a complete stop before I let it go back up, just in case the loose piece on the other end should, catch. I don't have 3 hands. Now once again, folks, it's not nearly as bad as it looks. I got to remember to reposition the camera and get a different angle when I do this kind of stuff. And there we have it, a nice square cut. Now when I fill this up with Alumilite, I'm probably going to want to go maybe 2 inches higher than the top of this. And I'm going to show you why. Okay, here we are back in our drawing program, and you can see I've got the Alumilite, approximately an inch or so above the top of the pendant. However, I'm going to want to sort of round over the top and make it kind of dome shaped. I think if it's crystal clear, it'd actually look quite nice. Might even have sort of a magnifying effect. At least that's what I'm hoping. So that means I'm going to have to fill the Alumilite up just a little higher. Okay, let's stick it on the lathe. And after we get it sort of turned down a bit, I'm rounding over, beginning to round over for the dome, and then I can part it off and then get the tailstock out of the way and do it the rest of the way. Once again, that's the plan. Well, I realize it's only about 1:45 in the afternoon, and I probably do have time to mix this up and give it a whirl, but I want to think this through yet. I don't want to be making any mistakes here. For instance, one thing that I have to really remember is, because this is clear, every little speck, every little piece of sawdust that is trapped in the clear Alumilite, you're going to see it. So what I'm going to be wanting to do is get the idea? Really good. Yeah, another thing I've got to, figure out is when I drop it into the Alumilite, like if I pour the Alumilite into this and I drop this down, this thing is going to hydraulic a little bit so that it's not going to want to push down. And yet, there's another way I could do it. I could drop this in and then pour the Alumilite in on top of it. But then I'm going to have air spaces all the way around, which could start coming up the sides, and give me air bubbles there. And before they get a chance to reach the surface, the Alumilite solidifies. And that wouldn't be good either, because you'd have all these little air bubbles showing. There is another thing I could do. I could put it in, and then I could do the vacuum chamber thing, although I think this is maybe a little bit too high. But then what's going to happen is air bubbles are going to come out of all the little pores on the end here, and they're going to get into the Alumilite, and I want to degas the Alumilite before I pour it in here. So I think putting it under vacuum after it's all put together here is not a good idea. There's so many little things I got to think through here to make sure I get this right. And the reason being is I've only got one of these. If I screw it up, it's gone. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.